Hello, world. This is Dan again, your friendly Dimgaard writer, publisher, DM. Um, so, this is expected to be the first in a series of videos to address questions and topics that come up repeatedly. What's inspired this is, it's in Winter Fantasy, and I found that I was going over the same things over and over again with the same or with different people, with the same topics, and the discussions were evolving in the same way each time. And this just strikes me as an efficient way. However, I'm going to structure this in a way that will progress. The first thing that I'm going to address is a question that often comes up when you encounter people who don't play Dungeons and Dragons, don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is, and also those who may be familiar with Dungeons and Dragons but don't know what Dimgaard is. So I'm looking to effectively answer two particular questions with this first video, and that is, what is Dungeons and Dragons? And secondly, what is Dimgaard? Then I don't know how frequently I will do these videos. It'll be as frequent as I have time, but I will progress with other topics. I think probably the next topic will be what kind of character should I play? It comes up a lot. And then, as time goes by and I've laid the foundation, addressed all the basic questions, I'll probably get more into how does the adventure day work in 5th edition, or how do you modify creatures in 5th edition, those sort of things. But we're going to start out basic and go from there. So, if you're play Dungeons and Dragons with regularity and you're comfortable talking about it, inevitably you're going to encounter people who don't know what Dungeons and Dragons are, and are going to ask you, what is Dungeons and Dragons? And it's always a challenge. You're like, how does that win? How do you win that game? Or is there, are there boards or cards involved? Those sort of questions. So my standard answer at this point is that it's a game that's sort of like a structured improv session, where you have one participant, the game master or dungeon master, who has used books, sometimes dice, to books that are contains reference and rules to construct a framework. And then you have other players who bring in their ideas of what the heroes of the improv should be. And the goal is not necessarily to win, because it's a very open-ended thing, just like improv is. The goal is to construct a narrative, right? So in the end, at the end of 4 hours, or sometimes multiple sessions of 4 hours, the goal is to have constructed a very interesting story that has involved the players through the heroes that they have brought to the table. And the dungeon master establishes the framework, and then also serves as the referee or judge, or fills in the narrative that is not particular to the protagonist in the story. So, like I say, the goal is the product is not a winner. The product is you have a really good, interesting story, ideally one that you will remember for years to come. And then Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing games in general, are unique among games. I play many, many games, and you can have a memorable Scrabble game or a memorable Monopoly game. Although to really do that, you have to be someone who performs at the highest level of that game, right? You don't have a casual Monopoly game that is memorable 5 years from now. Certainly championship players do, but not if you remember a Monopoly game, it's because Uncle Fred was drunk and made a scene at a family get-together. It's not because of what happened in the game. But Dungeons and Dragons is different from other games in that a player who is not particularly a player of the highest caliber in Dungeons and Dragons. You don't have to be a top tier Dungeons and Dragons player to have a session to generate that epic story that you will remember years from now. There are very casual players who will discuss Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, oh yeah, I played that in college and I remember blah blah blah, right? And they're not dedicated. They happen to they don't say, oh yeah, I played Trivial Pursuit and I remember this game when I was in college and blah blah blah. They don't do that, right? But Dungeons and Dragons does do that, and that, in my opinion, makes it unique among games and exceptional among games. That's the reason I enjoy it so much. Then we come to Dimgaard. People ask me, what is Dimgaard? And I tell them, well, it's a Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting. And if they're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, they understand that, and they're like, why do you need another? So the point of Dimgaard is in second edition particularly, there was this real trend towards high fantasy, and I preferred the low fantasy, much more gritty realism, much more a feel that was much closer to what the actual Dark Ages were, and not the Lords of Waterdeep. A Dark Sun was good for that if you were willing to accept the big limitations on magic. But I didn't want to impose that on my players. So Dimgaard is deliberately is constructed. It's a very dark, very dark campaign. People live short, miserable existence, often punctuated by a violent or agonizing death, and that is what the bulk of human history was. And you get to play a hero. You get to bring light into that world, and it deliberately accommodates a wide range of player options. It was that way intentionally. I did not want to limit. If a player found an interesting resource, and he wanted to construct a character out of it, I was always for it. That was true in 3.5 as well. So in order to do that, often players will find character builds that are particularly potent. And going back to generating that epic story, if you don't sufficiently challenge the characters, if the heroes are not sufficiently challenged, you don't get an epic story. Gandalf died in Lord of the Rings. That's fact. So Boromir died. Not only that, but the heroes were captured multiple times, and almost died over and over again. So it's not an epic story if the heroes, if the protagonists don't have a sincere threat of failure. And if you have that sincere threat of failure, you're going to have failures on occasion. Shouldn't happen every time. Shouldn't even happen half the time. But it should happen when things go bad. And if you're going to allow players to bring in the widest range of resources possible, including those that are overpowered, you've got to have the tools sufficiently to challenge those. Fortunately, I have an eye for that, and there are other DMs who just say, okay, fine, bring that in, and I'm just going to throw overpowered encounters at you, and you'll define because you're overpowered yourself. I'm very careful to maintain the rules of the game, but there's a lot you can do within the rules to challenge those overpowered characters. Now, when I began to distribute it widely, I realized that would be no fun for a lot of low-powered groups. Right? So I have structured the Dimgaard adventures so that there are optional traits that can be included in encounters to ramp up for those high-powered groups, and left out if you have more of the casual role-playing PCs, and still achieve that epic story that you're looking for. I built this, what I feel is a pretty rich campaign world, a lot of nuances. Players can bring in any deities they want. They can bring in any class they want, even those from non-core resources. And a DM should have the tools they need to sufficiently challenge just about any PC. So those are those two questions. I think the next topic I will cover when I have the time will be on character creation. That comes up a lot. Someone new is playing. What kind of character should I create? How do I create a character? So that'll be the next topic. And in the meantime, I hope that you will keep an eye out for my Kickstarters and back those. It's nice to have the validation of those and build the community. And I hope you guys, all your D20s are crits.